Before this life, this wonderful, bright new life, which Cindy-Mei Winter had long desired and fought for, and was just starting to enjoy, she'd had another, less happy life. No, this wasn't reincarnation. Not exactly. But it was a life so different from this one that she had been far too unhappy to see it through to the end. That is, without some drastic changes. That said, the two states of being were so vastly different and removed from each other that the most apt way she could find to reconcile them was to think of them as two separate lives altogether. In her dream, Mei wandered the halls of her former workplace, a dull, boring building in central Mars City that was the regional head office of the Colonial Intelligence Agency. She remembered the decor exactly, the featureless gray-brown wall panels, and the feel of the rough blue carpet tiles on the floor under her high-heeled office shoes as she walked past the endless row of doorways leading off to soulless offices and rooms filled with dull, impersonal, and identical open-plan cubicles. The hallway was deserted, and above the sound of her own footsteps and breathing, she heard the rising sound of people quietly at work in an office block turn into whispering and giggling, and then the sound of people, her co-workers, running, tripping over furniture, and pushing it aside in order to get to the doorways as she walked past. Faces jammed up against the window glass, the blinds bent and battered so they could watch the spectacle of her. They were laughing, mocking. Mei ignored the catcalls and laughing and occasional cries of "freak" and walked on. Then, as dreams often do, she found herself suddenly being confronted by the spectacle of her mother, her own dear, sweet mum, crying like she had on the day Mei had told her mother everything. Why are you doing this to me?" her mother demanded. Her mother's tears stung her like acid, along with a bitter regret that, her fault or not, it was because of her that they were being shed. "This isn't about you," Mei cried in response. "It never was. This is my life, and I have as much right to be happy being myself as you or anyone else." "Agent Winter," a familiar male voice called, demanding her attention. Suddenly, Mei found herself sitting across a desk from her supervisor, Director Cyrus P. Wiles, the short, tubby, balding man who was scowling at her. She felt that awful feeling she remembered as a kid at school while waiting outside the principal's office. That fear of being in trouble for having broken one of society's more obscure little rules without knowing or meaning to. "How dare you come to work dressed like that? What is this, a joke? Did you lose a bet? Couldn't you just get a tattoo like everyone else? What the hell's the matter with you anyway?" In an instant, Mei found herself now walking up to the stairs outside the gender clinic on her big day. The sky was blue, and the grass and gardens outside were beautiful. But this time it was different. There was suddenly a crowd of people gathered outside the door, barring her from getting inside. Wiles was there, and she saw faces of co-workers, a local politician, and some fanatical religious people foaming at the mouth at the sight of her. She set her jaw and plunged in, squirming and wriggling through the crowd as they shouted and clawed at her. And then, just as she reached the door, it opened. A man came out, stopping in front of her. There was no expression on his face, but in his eyes. Mei looked into her own eyes with frustration, fascination, horror, and terrible sadness. In an instant, Mei was again sitting at a table at her favorite diner in Stratton Boulevard, Mars City. "What makes you think you'd ever look like a woman?" her best friend from childhood, David Link, asked her derisively. "A real woman? Come on, man. Who the hell would even date you?" "You're such a handsome man." Mei's mother beamed proudly, and she found herself back at home, where her heart sank still further. "I bet every girl on Mars would love to marry you." "Girls have curves and bulges." David frowned at him, back at the diner, then laughed. "Not biceps and abs like Chuck Norris. You look like you could feature in an action movie all by yourself. All my life, as a kid, I was jealous of what you had. Until now." But Mei didn't begrudge David his jealousy. She'd always eagerly have given away to David all that Mei didn't want. It wasn't who she was. "You have to turn away from this sinful behavior," Father Jonas, their old family priest, said accusingly, while waving a crooked arthritic-ridden finger under her nose as she stood in the portico of the old cathedral in Mars City. He clutched at the golden crucifix on the chain around his neck, as if talking to her might infect him with demonic possession. You must accept your body the way God made it. Did God make a mistake? Did the potter's hand slip, young'un? No. God is perfect. You are a man because God made you that way. You will die a man, or you will fall to sin and be dead to God and his people. What am I supposed to do? May cried, tears streaming down her face. It hurts so much. It hurts too much. Suffering is good for the soul, Father Jonas declared. It tests our faith. It proves us worthy. What kind of cruel, hateful, bombastic man are you? What kind of God, what sort of monster could do this to me and expect me to live with it? What did I ever do to deserve to be so unhappy? May cried, her emotions and her voice rising to a crescendo. What did I ever do to deserve to be so unhappy? Then suddenly, May was on the streets of Mars City, just walking and feeling obvious. People passing by stared, and their stares burned into her. Then she found herself surrounded by a gang of thugs, pushing and shoving her. Only this time, there was a big bruiser with them she'd never seen before, much bigger than the one whose ass she'd kicked before. He leered over her and spat in disgust. And then, just as suddenly, he became an extra-large version of Mr. Wiles, chomping his frayed, soggy cigar stub while ranting. I eat faggots like you for breakfast. What makes you think you're good enough to be a woman? Back at Wiles' desk again, it was just after May had put him in the picture about everything. Her eyes scanned his bright red face, his wild, bulging eyes full of anger, and his trembling lips working almost like a guppy's mouth, she thought. Meanwhile, in the background, she heard his raised voice echoing, You can't forget about that promotion, you freak. This agency doesn't need degenerate scum like you. I'm giving it to Miles Jensen. Get out of my sight. The words "get out" still echoing in her head, May awoke to a frantic hammering on a door. She stirred in the dark, half asleep, struggling to shake off the memory of the disorienting nightmare, and realized where she was. She was in her bed, in her room, at the resort. She stumbled to the door and opened it. She was greeted by a member of the resort staff, standing in the passage outside in a nightgown, his hair still in curlers. Sorry to worry you, miss, he lisped, flapping his hands. The city's being attacked. Please don't panic. It's best if everyone gathers in the auditorium. We should be safer there. Attacked? By who? May asked almost instinctively, somewhat perplexed. Are we in immediate danger? I don't know, miss, he said with a blank expression on his face. Anyway, it's against the law to bomb holiday resorts, I think. You sure about that? May asked, raising an eyebrow at him. Please, miss, there's no time for questions now. The man hurriedly left her and flapped on to the next door. May went back inside for her slippers and nightgown and sat down on her bed, blinking for a while in the still blinding light. Was she dreaming? No, she was pretty sure she was awake. She wanted to know what was going on. Okay, was really going on. Everybody would be gathering in the auditorium, the man said, where it should be safe. Having been on the receiving end of more than one barrage of bombs, shells, and rockets in her aforementioned previous life, May had some serious doubts about the value of a lightly constructed auditorium as a bunker. Right then, to the auditorium.
Cindy-Mei Winter had until recently been Agent Winter, C.I.A. That's Colonial Intelligence Agency, and one of their best agents. That is, until they threw her out for coming to work in a dress. After that disappointing and sudden end to what had been a promising career, May rewarded herself with a long, relaxing vacation in the Outblack to celebrate her gender reassignment and her new start in life. The first stop on her journey turned out to be a little backwater planet called Deanna. As a third-rate colony in the Terran Empire, Deanna had more than its fair share of dull moments. Dull, but also definitely weird. Deanna orbited a star called Ramalama, and if you think that's funny, Deanna's two moons were called Ding and Dong, respectively. This was a local joke. Then the unexpected happened, a single Ruminarii Hammerhead, the first seen by humans in over 80 years, arrived to invade the small backwater Terran colony. Mei had hoped to put her violent and somehow depressing past behind her, but now it seemed her new beginning and her holiday were going to have to wait. The Gimp were back, and this was no time to be a sissy. She faced seemingly insurmountable odds in the midst of panic, hysteria, falling sherry, and people hiding under furniture. What would she do? Thankfully, with the assistance of an alien walking talking plant called Fred, a local bounty hunter called Beck the Badfella, and the Skeggs Valley Dynamite Fishing Club, she wouldn't have to find out alone. Black Sunrise is book 1 in the Quantum series by South African writer Christina Engeler, available now on Amazon in paperback, ebook, and as an audiobook narrated by Darla Middlebrook.
In this space-time ride sublime.